Cassius has been following the religion of Islam, the Muslim religion, for the past 4 or 5 years. And he's always been the most likable, friendly person in the world. And I think you'll find that all Muslims who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have the ability to make friends with everyone.
But Cassius destroyed that image the other night when he knocked out Sonny Liston.
The power structure had successfully created the image of the American Negro as someone with no confidence, no militancy, and they had done this by giving him images of heroes that weren't truly militant or confident. And now here come Cassius, the exact contrast of everything that was representative of the Negro image. He said he was the greatest. All of the odds were against him. He upset the odds makers. He won. He became victorious. He became the champ. They knew that as soon as, if people began to identify with Cassius and the type of image he was creating, they were going to have trouble out of these Negroes, because they'd have Negroes walking around the street saying, "I'm the greatest."
You said earlier that you don't recruit, and yet Cassius Clay says that you converted him, which is in a form recruiting.
Well, only he and I are friends, and it wasn't an active effort that was made to recruit him. But Cassius has been a Muslim for 4 or 5 years, and he and I happen to be very good friends. I was with him in Miami before the fight. I had a chance to study him. So Cassius has more depth than is realized by most people. He's a very, very deep-thinking person. He has strong convictions. He's more intelligent than they give him credit for. In fact, Cassius actually made Sonny Liston whip himself. Not only did he beat Sonny Liston, he beat the press. He beat the Miami Boxing Commission. He even beat the medical examiner who gave him his examination before the fight. And I think that when people realize that he did this with his brain, then they will somewhat get a better idea of how brainy the man actually is. And also, in my opinion, Cassius is a good example of the new type of Negro that's coming into existence in America today. The very fact that Cassius will say, "I am the greatest." Negroes don't say this. Negroes have been fed the type of brainwashing that America is an expert at, to the point where most of them have an inferiority complex and don't want to be superior. They don't want to be the greatest. They just want to be great. Or they don't want to be supreme. They just want to be equal, you know. So Cassius represents this young, new type thinking Negro today, who feels that he is within himself just as capable of becoming the greatest, or as great, or whatever else anybody else is.
I don't think he's the greatest poet, or ever will be, I'll tell you that. Do you?
Well, there are different forms of poetry.
Yes, that's for sure.
To the fact that heavyweight champion Cassius Clay is one of your followers. Do you think he's a sincere follower?
Well, Cassius is following Elijah Muhammad, and I'm no longer a follower of Elijah Muhammad myself. I do believe that Cassius is sincere in what he has been doing. I was with him during the 9 days, I think, when he was training for the Liston fight, and he seemed very sincere. Whether he has understanding to equal his sincerity is another thing.
Why did you fall out with Elijah Muhammad?
Well, some internal disagreements and differences that I would rather not go into, but I think that they will come out in public before long.
These were personal differences?
Well, for one thing, I believe in the religion of Islam, and I went to Mecca recently to get a better understanding of it, and I think that the black Muslim movement itself, if it doesn't adopt the Sunni practice of Islam, the orthodox practice of Islam, that it will disintegrate and fall apart.
With Elijah Muhammad?
Yes, sir. Having dinner with him.
Uh-huh. One of the main reasons is your friendship with Malcolm X. He's a friend of yours now, isn't he?
Yeah. He's a brother of mine. He's my brother. Whatever you do, he's my brother.
Uh-huh. Now that he's split away from the Muslims...
I don't know about splitting. I'll have to see the higher authority.
He did a few unwise things. A plane crashed in Europe somewhere with 130 whites on it from Atlanta. And he praised the death of these people dying such a tragic death. And Elijah Muhammad had to dismiss him for 3 months because he spoke for himself, not for the movement. And when Kennedy died, he also jumped up and praised Kennedy's death. The first white man that I've seen who really wanted to do something, tried to do right, couldn't seem to be right with me. And many people were grieving at the time Kennedy died. Mainly Negroes. They cried more than white people. And this was an unwise thing for a man representing some 700,000 followers to stand up and praise a man like Kennedy's death.
There's no organization in this country that could do more for the struggling black man than the Black Muslim movement if it wanted to. But it has gotten into the possession of a man who's become senile, and then he has surrounded himself by his children who are now in power and want nothing but luxury and will do anything to safeguard their own interests. The only thing that I regret in all of this is that two black groups have to fight and kill each other off. Elijah Muhammad could stop the whole thing tomorrow just by raising his hand. Really, he could. He could stop the whole thing by raising his hand. But he won't. He doesn't love black people. He doesn't even love his own followers. Proof of which they're killing each other. They killed one in the Bronx. They shot another one in the Bronx. They tried to get 6 of us Sunday morning. And the pattern has developed across the country. The man has gone insane. Absolutely out of his mind. Besides, you can't be 70 years old and surround yourself by a handful of 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and keep your right mind. You can't do it.
Malcolm X and anybody else who attacks or talks about attacking Elijah Muhammad will die. No man can oppose the message of Almighty God verbally or physically and get away with it.
I would like to say one thing about, I don't know too much about what he saw, but he was there in 1959, I think, before, and he saw that there were white Muslims. But Malcolm X got famous mainly being hard on people like you, white people, white devils, you blue-eyed, blonde-headed dog. Oh, he got famous like this. And he had made so many white enemies. Whites cared nothing about Malcolm nor so-called Negroes when he was with Donovan Elijah Muhammad, but they seemed to love and follow dead leaders, people. But I would like to say this.
The white people didn't kill him.
No, I would like to say this. He was a man, everything he had came from Donovan Elijah Muhammad. And when he denounced or was put out for various reasons of the faith, then he had to, from what I understood, this is me talking, I'll be to blame if I say anything wrong, he had to get back with you all. And he, in other words, he seemed to be apologizing for things that he had said because the protection of Allah and the Muslims were not with him. But I would like to say that we also...
You think that he tried to make himself pleasing to the white community
this
because he had antagonized
This is
Elijah
me
Muhammad.
talking. This is not antagonize him, but antagonize you.
No, but you say that...
I would like to say that whites jumped right behind him. They're making a book about him. There's required reading in all colleges now, and they're making a movie about him and projecting him as the leader. And if you read his book and see the movie that's coming out, it'll make you hate Elijah Muhammad and the Muslims. Mainly, this is done to turn the black people against the real leader. And I like to say that this is the way white people rule. This is your history. Divide and conquer. See, the first whites, your fathers, when they came over, they co-chiefs that running bulls stole his horses. Then after they got through fighting, and they came in and took over. And whites have always put one against another. And now they have a dead man who was nothing but he admitted himself, Malcolm, was a tramp, had white women selling the body for him. He was nothing until the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made him great. Made him great. Taught him, even his name, X, come from Elijah. He gave him his name. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was an established leader before he was born. Now you seem to try to make it look like he was a leader and he was powerful. If Malcolm X had stayed with the man that made him great, taught him everything he knew, today he'd been big, big, big. But as soon as, in other words, how can I come to your son and say you are wrong for spanking him when you fed him, you clothed him, you gave him his name, you birthed him in the world? Who am I to come in and be the judge and say, why did you spank that boy? You taught him, you have a right to spank him. And Malcolm X did some things. He said something about Kennedy he shouldn't have said. 130 whites died tragically on a jet. He praised it. and Honorable Elijah Muhammad is not the kind of man to ordain it, so he had to spank him. And after you white people had told him how good he talked, he should be the leader, he couldn't take the spanking. He had to run out and start him a movement, and that's when you destroyed him. You understand? See, so I would say whites destroyed Malcolm X.
I understand what you say. I understand what you say, and I don't doubt either the sincerity or the eloquence of your tribute to Elijah Muhammad, but I do think that assuming that we are prepared to question the divinity of Elijah Muhammad, then one has to assume that somebody like Malcolm X, when he turned against him, might have been doing so for honest, sincere reasons. That is to say, he might have thought, well, I've been following this man for a number of years, but all of a sudden I have reached a level of understanding which permits me to see that he's pretty human after all, and that beyond a certain point he doesn't have anything to teach me.
He should have always known that he was human, and not having nothing to teach him.
Some people treat him as though he were divine, you know.
Yeah, well,
the way they did Father Divine would be another example.
And we don't talk about dead people. They're dead and they're gone.
Who's dead?
Malcolm X is dead.
Oh, yes.
And we followed Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is the boss. And we'd rather not to stay here on the show and waste a lot of time arguing about a dead black man when whites are our common enemies.